You're listening to Agent Amigos. In this talk, the robot revolution, who's next on the chopping block? Let's get into it. Picture this, you're driving to work, sipping your coffee, and you see a delivery robot rolling down the sidewalk, carrying a pizza. It's not a sci-fi movie. It's happening right now in cities like San Francisco and London. And that's just the visible part of the iceberg. Behind the scenes, robots are packing your online orders, sorting your mail, and even flipping burgers. But here's the thing, most of us haven't noticed how fast it's happening. In 2023, the International Federation of Robotics reported that there were over 3.5 million industrial robots operating worldwide. That's a record high. And it's not just car factories anymore. Robots are in warehouses, hospitals, and even farms. They're picking lettuce, stitching wounds, and stacking boxes. The numbers are staggering, but the real shocker is the pace. In the last 5 years, robot installations have grown by nearly 60%. But here's the catch, every robot that takes a job is a human who's out of work. And that's not just blue-collar jobs. We're talking about lawyers, accountants, and even radiologists. The invasion is silent, but it's everywhere. And most people are completely unaware. So, what does that mean for you? Well, that's what we're going to explore in the next few minutes. Because understanding the robot revolution is the first step to surviving it. And trust me, it's not all doom and gloom. But you need to know what's coming. Let's start with a look back at how we got here. Because this isn't the first time we've feared machines taking our jobs. And that history might just surprise you. Most people think automation fears are a modern thing, but actually, they're as old as the Industrial Revolution. Let me take you back to 1811 in Nottingham, England. A group of skilled textile workers, known as the Luddites, were furious. They saw machines that could weave cloth faster than any human, and they feared for their livelihoods. So, they took matters into their own hands. They smashed the machines. It got so serious that the British government sent troops to stop them. But here's the twist, the Luddites didn't stop progress. The machines won, and eventually, new jobs emerged that no one could have imagined. Fast forward to the 1960s. The first industrial robots, like the Unimate, started appearing in General Motors factories. They were clunky, but they could weld and lift heavy parts. Again, workers panicked. But guess what? The auto industry didn't collapse. It actually grew, and the number of jobs increased. The difference was that the jobs changed. People moved from doing the back-breaking work to supervising the machines. But here's the thing, every time there's a new wave of automation, we hear the same predictions. This time it's different. And maybe it is. But history shows that technology doesn't just destroy jobs, it creates new ones. The problem is, those new jobs require different skills. And that transition is never smooth. So, when we hear about robots taking over, we should remember the Luddites. They were desperate, but they couldn't stop the future. The question is, can we adapt faster this time? Because the pace of change is much quicker now. And that's what makes this era unique. Let's look at the jobs that are most at risk. And it's not who you might think. Here's a surprising statistic, the jobs most at risk aren't the glamorous ones. They're the ones that require the same action over and over again. Think about a warehouse worker. Every day, they scan boxes, lift them, and place them on a conveyor belt. It's mind-numbing, but it pays the bills. And it's exactly what robots are best at. In 2022, Amazon had over 750,000 robots working alongside its human employees. These robots can move shelves, sort packages, and even pack items. They don't get tired, they don't take breaks, and they don't complain. But it's not just warehouses. Consider a cashier. Their job is to scan items, handle money, and bag groceries. That's repetitive. And we're already seeing self-checkout machines replace them. In fact, a study by McKinsey found that about 60% of all occupations have at least 30% of activities that can be automated with current technology. That's huge. And here's the thing. The trap is that these jobs often don't require a college degree, but they're essential for many families. So, when a robot takes over, what are those workers supposed to do? That's the million-dollar question. But there's a silver lining. Robots are terrible at dealing with unpredictability. They can't handle a customer who asks for a refund, or a package that's oddly shaped. So, the jobs that require human judgment and flexibility are safer. But that's a small comfort when you're the one being replaced. So, what about the white-collar workers? They think they're safe, but they're not. And that's a wake-up call. You might think that if you have a degree and sit at a desk, you're immune to the robot invasion. But that's a dangerous assumption. Let's look at lawyers. For years, they've spent hours reviewing documents for legal cases. It's tedious, but it's billable. Now, AI can do that in seconds. In 2016, an AI called Ross was used by a law firm to research case law, and it found relevant cases in minutes that would take a human days. And it's not just research. AI can draft contracts, predict case outcomes, and even review evidence. So, junior lawyers who do that kind of work are at risk. But it's not just law. Take accounting. Software can now process invoices, track expenses, and even flag anomalies. In 2020, Deloitte implemented an AI system that can audit 100% of a company's transactions, instead of just a sample. That means the traditional auditor's job is changing rapidly. And here's the kicker, even radiologists, who are highly trained doctors, are facing competition. AI can read X-rays and MRIs with remarkable accuracy. In some studies, it outperforms human radiologists in detecting certain conditions. So, even the most skilled professionals aren't safe. But here's the good news, AI isn't perfect. It lacks the common sense and ethical judgment that humans bring. It can't explain why it made a decision, and it can't handle nuance. So, the jobs that survive will be those that require human interaction, empathy, and complex problem-solving. But the days of routine cognitive work are numbered. And that brings us to the service industry, where the impact is even more visible. Imagine walking into your favorite fast food restaurant. You order on a touchscreen, pay with a card, and pick up your meal from a cubby. No human interaction. That's already happening in places like McDonald's and Panera. And it's not just fast food. In many retail stores, self-checkout kiosks are replacing cashiers. In 2021, Walmart had over 100,000 self-checkout machines. That's a lot of jobs gone. But it's not just the frontline workers. Think about the stockroom staff who unload trucks and put products on shelves. Robots like the Tally, a shelf-scanning robot, can monitor inventory and identify empty shelves. They're being used in stores like Schnucks and Giant Eagle. The result is that fewer human workers are needed for these tasks. And here's the thing, these jobs are often held by the most vulnerable workers, teenagers, part-timers, and people with limited education. They're the ones who lose out when automation hits. And the pandemic accelerated this trend. In 2020, when lockdowns forced stores to limit workers, they turned to robots even more. And they haven't looked back. But there's a ray of hope. Service jobs that require emotional intelligence, like a barista who remembers your name or a hotel concierge who recommends a hidden gem, are harder to automate. People crave human connection. So, the future might not be about eliminating all service jobs, but about making them more human-centric. Let's look at the elephant in the room, AI that can write, draw, and code. That's a whole new ballgame. Have you heard of ChatGPT? It's an AI that can write essays, answer questions, and even have conversations. And it's just the tip of the iceberg. There are AIs like DALL-E that can create images from text descriptions, and GitHub Copilot that can write code. This is a significant shift for creative and technical professions. Let's start with writing. In 2023, a study found that AI could write news articles that readers couldn't distinguish from human written ones. That's a direct threat to journalists and copywriters. But it's not just writing. AI can generate marketing copy, social media posts, and even poetry. And it's getting better every day. But here's the twist, AI doesn't understand what it's writing. It's just predicting patterns from data. So, it can produce grammatically correct text, but it lacks the depth and nuance of a human writer. Still, for businesses that need quick, cheap content, AI is a tempting option. And what about coders? GitHub Copilot can suggest code snippets and even complete entire functions. It's like having an autocomplete for programming. This doesn't mean programmers will be replaced overnight, but it does mean that entry-level coding jobs might shrink. Because if AI can write the basic code, then you need fewer people to do the grunt work. But here's the good news, AI needs humans to guide it. It needs us to define the problem, set the parameters, and interpret the results. So, the jobs of the future will be about working with AI, not against it. But that requires a shift in skills. So, what's the human advantage? It's not just about intelligence, it's about empathy and creativity. You've probably heard that robots can't feel emotions. That's true. And that's their biggest weakness. In fields like healthcare, education, and counseling, human connection is essential. Think about a nurse. They don't just administer medicine, they comfort patients, listen to their fears, and hold their hands. That's something a robot can't replicate. In a 2020 survey, 92% of patients said they preferred human nurses over robotic ones, even if the robot was more efficient. And creativity. Yes, AI can generate art and music, but it lacks the lived experience that fuels true creativity. A human painter draws on their memories, emotions, and cultural context. AI just remixes existing data. The result is often derivative and lacks soul. So, jobs that require original thinking, storytelling, and emotional resonance are safe, for now. But here's the thing, the human advantage isn't automatic. We need to cultivate these skills. Schools are starting to emphasize creativity, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence. But it's a slow process. And in the meantime, many people are stuck in jobs that are being automated. So, what can you do? First, understand that your humanity is your superpower. Second, keep learning and adapting. But that's easier said than done, especially if you're in a job that's at risk. Let's look at the gig economy, where robots are already making decisions. If you're a driver for Uber or Lyft, you're already working for an algorithm. It decides when you work, where you go, and how much you earn. And now, with the rise of autonomous vehicles, even the driving itself is at risk. Waymo, Google's self-driving car company, is already operating robot access in Phoenix and San Francisco. They're not perfect, but they're improving fast. But it's not just driving. Gig workers in general, delivery drivers, taskers, even freelance designers, are being managed by algorithms. These algorithms track your performance, give you ratings, and can even terminate you without human intervention. It's a new kind of boss, and it's ruthless. Here's a shocking fact. In 2022, a study found that gig workers on platforms like Upwork and Fiverr were being undercut by AI-generated content. Clients could get a logo or a blog post for a fraction of the cost, and they didn't care if it was made by a human or a machine. So, the gig economy, which was supposed to offer freedom, is now a race to the bottom. But there's a way to fight back. Gig workers can specialize in tasks that require human judgment and personal touch. For example, a freelance writer can focus on investigative journalism or brand storytelling, which AI can't do well. A driver can offer a personal tour experience, not just a ride. The key is to add value that a robot can't. And that brings us to education. Our schools are still preparing students for jobs that are disappearing. Our education system was designed for the industrial age. We sit in rows, memorize facts, and take standardized tests. But that's not what the future needs. The World Economic Forum predicts that by 2025, 50% of all employees will need reskilling. That's a massive shift, and our schools are lagging behind. Here's the problem: we're still teaching kids to compete with machines instead of complementing them. We focus on rote memorization, which is exactly what AI is best at. Instead, we should be teaching creativity, problem-solving, and emotional intelligence. But that's hard to measure, and it's hard to teach. Some schools are starting to get it. In Finland, they've introduced phenomenon-based learning, where students work on real-world problems that require collaboration and critical thinking. In the US, some schools are teaching coding and robotics from an early age. But these are exceptions, not the norm. And it's not just kids. Adults need to learn new skills too. But the current system doesn't support lifelong learning. We need to create a culture of continuous education, where people can upskill and reskill throughout their careers. That's the only way to stay ahead of the robots. But there's a bigger issue here. Even if we learn new skills, will there be enough jobs to go around? That's the question that keeps economists up at night. Economists are divided on the future of work. Some are optimistic, like Erik Brynjolfsson, who argues that AI will augment human abilities rather than replace them. He points to examples like radiologists who use AI to spot tumors more accurately, or lawyers who use AI to review contracts faster. In this view, AI is a tool, not a replacement. But others are more pessimistic. They point to the fact that in the past, technology created new industries, but those industries required high levels of education. The transition was painful, and many people were left behind. But here's the thing: UBI doesn't solve the problem of purpose. Humans need to feel useful. We need to contribute to society. Just handing out money might not be enough. So, we need to think about what a post-work society would look like. Maybe it's a society where we focus on care, creativity, and community. That's a beautiful vision, but it's not guaranteed. So, what's the path forward? It's not about stopping technology. That's impossible and undesirable. Instead, it's about managing the transition. We need policies that support workers, education that prepares people for the future, and a mindset that embraces change. And that's where you come in. You have more control than you think. You can start by learning about AI and automation. Understand what they can and can't do. Then, identify your unique strengths and build on them. Focus on skills that are hard to automate, like creativity, empathy, and complex problem solving. And don't forget to network. Humans are social creatures. Building relationships with other people is still the best way to find opportunities. Robots don't have coffee chats, and they don't have mentors. But you do. So, use that to your advantage. Finally, stay flexible. The jobs of the future might not exist yet. So, be open to learning new things and pivoting your career. It's not about having a single path, it's about being adaptable. And here's the most important thing: don't panic. Yes, the robot invasion is real, but it's not the end of the world. It's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. We have the chance to redefine work, to focus on what makes us human, and to build a better society. That's a future worth fighting for. So, as you go about your day, remember this: the robots are coming, but they're not invincible. They're tools, and tools are only as good as the people who use them. So, be the person who uses them wisely. Be the person who adapts, who learns, who connects. That's how you'll survive and thrive in the age of automation. And that's the real story. Not about machines taking over, but about humans rising to the challenge. So, let's embrace that future together. Let's make it a future where technology serves us, not the other way around. That's the world we can build, one step at a time. For example, when agriculture mechanized, millions of farm workers moved to cities and found work in factories. But that took decades, and it wasn't easy. And here's the thing, the pace of change today is much faster than in the past. It took 50 years for electricity to transform industries, but AI is spreading in just a few years. That means the disruption will be more sudden, and the transition will be harder. Some experts propose a universal basic income as a solution. That's where the government gives everyone a basic stipend to cover their needs, regardless of whether they work. It's an idea that's gaining traction, especially in Silicon Valley. But it's controversial. Critics say it would discourage work and be too expensive. Supporters say it would provide a safety net while people find new ways to contribute. Thank you for watching Agent Amigos. If this talk sparked something in you, hit like, subscribe to Agent Amigos, and share it with one person who needs to hear it. Knowledge is better when it is shared. See you at the next talk.